Hey everyone, welcome to our Biostats series, and today we're going to learn about how to solve these graphical questions that show up all the time on the exam, right? So before we jump into solving these questions, I want to tell you that if you're anything like me, these curved questions probably look really intimidating the first time that you see them, right? We've got two graphs here with true positives, false positives, true negatives, and false negative values, and then they move the cutoff right or left and they ask you what changes. And honestly, it can feel like there are so many things happening, but here's the good news: these are actually some of the most common and easiest questions on the ADAT. And once you understand and learn a simple three-step approach, you can solve almost any one of these questions under 30 seconds. So before we jump into solving these questions, let's first understand what it even means that the cutoff is shifting. What does this cutoff mean? So this vertical line right here is known as the cutoff, right? And this line determines whether a test is considered positive or negative. So anything to the right of the line is positive and anything to the left of the line is negative. So when the question says that the cutoff has moved, all it is saying is that we have essentially changed the threshold, right? We've changed the threshold that is required to call somebody positive, right? For example, right, think of it as a exam. So if I say that anyone scoring above 50 passes, right? So 50 is my threshold. But if I decide to increase the threshold, I would say that anyone above 70 is the person who passes. So initially, a person who had scored 60 in this case was set to pass, but in this case, that person would fail, right? So it all depends on my threshold and how strict I am with my threshold, right? So if I become more strict, fewer students will pass, right? So this is exactly what we're going to look at in these questions. And so let's look at a high yield cheat sheet that I have created. And all you need to do is look at it in 3 steps. Look at the question. So the first step, you got to look whether the cutoff has been moved to the right or to the left. So if the cutoff moves to the right, it means the test has become more strict. That means I have moved my passing marks from 50 to 70 right here. And the opposite is true for the left. If the cutoff moves here, that means I have become more lenient. Maybe I have reduced my passing threshold from 50 to 40. And that is essentially what you need to look at. Has it moved left or right? The second thing is that you need to know these formulas by heart, the sensitivity and specificity formulas. And lastly, you need to just see if they're asking about the diseased people or the healthy population, and you need to apply. So if the cutoff moves right, they're talking about the diseased people. So for example, in this case, the threshold has moved to the right. That means that before I had these many true negatives and these many true positives, but now I have a lot more true negatives and very little true positives, right? And that is pretty much the case because the sensitivity will decrease, and as the formula suggests, if the sensitivity decreases, the true positive will decrease and the false negatives will increase. And that's exactly what we see. The true positives have decreased and the false negatives, which were only these many before, have become more now, right? So you just need to know the formulas, and the same goes for specificity. If they talk about healthy population, you know you need to think about the false positive and the true negative values. And you can see that because moving right means that the test is becoming more specific, the specificity is increasing, means the true negative, which was originally this much, is now increased to this much. And the false negative, which and the false negative, false positive, so the true negative, which was initially this much, has become a lot more, and the false positive, which was originally a lot more, has become a lot less, right? So that's exactly what this is about. And the same way you're going to look at the question, if the curve or the cutoff moves towards the left, it's going to be the exact opposite, right? So you can remember these clinical pearls for your exam, and all you need to do is apply the 3-step rule here. So let's try to solve some questions, right? So the first question says, the graphs below show the distribution of a diagnostic test for a disease and no disease population. So we know that the disease population, the positive will be on the right and the negative will be on the left. And the vertical line represents the cutoff. And if the cutoff is moved from point A to point B, right, that means the sensitivity decreases, as we saw from our cheat sheet right here. So if the sensitivity decreases, which of the following will increase, right? So in the questions you won't really get this hint that I have put right here. This is just to make you understand, but you should know that if the curve is moving towards the right, that means that it's becoming more strict, which means that the sensitivity will decrease. So the formula of sensitivity is this. And so we know that if sensitivity is decreasing, that means true positives are decreasing and false negatives are the ones which are increasing. So D would be the answer for this question. Let's look at another case wherein the cutoff was over here and it has shifted left towards here. So the graphs below show the distribution of a diagnostic test for a disease and no disease population. The vertical line represents the cutoff. If the cutoff is moved from point B to point A, which is basically moving left, and here is another hint for you, which says that the sensitivity increases if the line or the cutoff moves towards the left. Which of the following will increase now, right? So we know that if sensitivity is increasing, we know that specificity will decrease at this point. So if specificity decreases, then we can go back to our high yield cheat sheet and look at this. So if it moves left, the specificity will decrease and sensitivity will increase, right? So we can, by both our formulas, we can look at that. So if the specificity decreases, right, and the formula is true negative by true negative plus false positive, so we know that the true negatives will decrease and false positives will increase. And if we look at sensitivity, that says that true positives upon positive plus false negatives. So if the sensitivity is increasing, the false negatives will decrease and the true positives will increase. So we have two values that are increasing, the true positives and the false positives, but thankfully we only have false positives in our answer choices, so C will be the answer. So essentially this is exactly how you're gonna go about these questions. They're extremely easy if you know the formulas and if you know the steps to follow. So keep watching for more such tips and tricks, and we'll see you in the next video. If you want to know more about sensitivity, specificity, you can watch our previous video, which I'll link down in the description as well.